Hi, I'm Tyson.
I'm Chelsea.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Adam.
And we're the Gamesmiths, and we just got done playing Mazers, and we want to talk to you a little bit about our experience with it. To kick us off, Adam's got some thoughts.
First of all, the appearance of the game was awesome. It was, I love the art. It was appropriate. It was fun. It was
That kind of old school,
Yeah.
like 80s game feel. I like the
yeah,
box art. Yeah,
like
it's
kind
cool.
of comic booky too. It was really interesting. I was very excited to play right when I saw the box. Pulled it out. We don't get a lot of games that came out of a mold or like have some sort of
Vacuum
like
formed plastic.
substantial, like
Unique
actually
kind
designed
of component,
3D
yeah.
board. So, I mean, just its presence on the table was very different, and I was super intrigued from the first time it came out. I didn't know if we were going to be like wrapping rubber bands around those things. All that to say, my imagination was just like, well, how am I going to, what's this for? And I see these little mice, and it just felt appropriate. You could have easily done that on a flat board with a bunch of squares like most games are, and you can move your mouse through the maze, and you can lay down, you could shift walls around, and that's easy to do. But I can tell you went to the next level and really made it stand out and different. And for me, and I think the rest of us, that really went a long way, and we enjoyed that aspect of the game. I think even going through the gameplay, pushing my mouse through the maze, I loved again that it was a little figurine mouse, not just a mouse picture on a little chit or a token. So I could tell you went to a lot of expense and effort to make the game present how it does, and I think it presented very well. So,
Yeah, and I think it looked like you had those nice, like, solid primary colors too. I think it looked really good on camera. I think you saw it too. I think it popped really well and everything was very clean and very clear. And like Adam was saying, with all the pegs and little things, like I wanted to, before I even read the rules or figured out what the game was, I already wanted to start like connecting those dots and drawing lines, and it made me want to do what I was going to do when I put the board out and set it up. I'm like, oh, that's what I get to do. Cool.
yeah.
One thing that that you do need to fix is the rules. Number one, there was a handful of typos in there, and just like misspellings that the word turn was often replaced with the word tum, T-U-M, for some reason. And there was just a couple other like typos or spelling errors. I would just read through it again and try and correct those. And then the other thing that was real kind of a pain was your illustrations for when you were setting up when you're showing the setup of the board and everything, to have a picture of the board that's like the whole board was nice, but like specifically where you're like explaining the safety zones, where you were drawing the yellow lines on the instruction manual, where like you can't place your things there because you have to be considerate of your opponent's next turn. Those were you didn't need to show the whole board for that. Just zoom in to the square, because like to figure out what was going on, I was like squinting and holding it up, because really all the information that I needed was on one tiny little square, but you were showing the whole board. Just zoom in on those and be a little clearer on that, because that was the biggest thing. That was kind of the hardest thing to understand. Everything else about the game was pretty intuitive, except for the like safety zone around the mouse and being considerate of your opponent's next turn. That was the one thing where like I really need an illustration to figure out exactly what you're getting at here, and it was really hard to see that. But otherwise, I think it was pretty solid. Just a few typos and a couple of like just zoom in on the important part of the picture. If there's only one little part of, if only 10% of the board's important, just show me that 10%. Don't show me 100%. I can figure it out. So. Those would be my two biggest pieces of advice on the rules specifically.
Yeah, I think the only other rule that we were confused about was those corners where
Oh yeah, if you
kind
could
of couldn't
hook up
fit,
on the diagonal
like,
corners.
Yeah, so maybe just clarify that a little bit. The only other issue I had was just the like dexterity of it, was getting those pieces to really lock in and stay where they are. And I feel like that was the most time consuming part of the game, because we were all trying to, make sure that they got in and stayed there as we're counting
Yeah.
and moving and stuff.
And I think there were grooves, but
there
if it
are
were
grooves,
easier to
but-
see,
I mean, I think
maybe
that
even.
this seems like a very family-oriented game,
Uh-huh.
which is really cool. And I think that for younger kids, they might have even more difficulty
yeah.
than we did with
Mm-hmm.
like getting him. Maybe we were just like putting them on wrong, but
Yeah.
I think it's just kind of difficult. But other than that,
Yeah, and I don't think that it was so much an issue for an adult, like Chelsea's saying, to be able to put it in. Like,
except
we
for
all
me,
could do
my
it.
tiny hands.
But the main concern was the amount of time that it took to really do that. Like I almost was like, okay, I want to get to your turn to see what you do now, but now I have to put these pegs in these spots, and okay, it took more time, and it felt like there was some dead time, but that wasn't necessarily bad. Like, that was just. And as I experienced it more, I became more adept at it, and it wasn't a bad thing. That's just a physical obstacle that we had to learn to overcome. And once we did, I think the experience with, like Ryan was saying early on, building that path and seeing it manifest and just like see it come out was just a really rewarding experience. And then seeing that, oh, if I'm heading down this path, I can see that Chelsea's blockers are near that area, so is it worth it to try and shoot past and hope I get a high roll to be able to get beyond those blockers, or do I play it safe and go a little bit around? So there were a couple of instances in which I think the choices were paramount to the overall experience of the game, and that was the first play of the game. Okay, which way do I go, left or right? Where do I send my blockers? And for me, I didn't at first experience like that choice, but I realized after I had played that, I was like, oh, that could have determined a lot about this game, because now Chelsea gets this opportunity to go play, and she can choose to go head on against me, or she can choose to send her blockers towards me only, or she has more options there. So that first choice is a lot more important than I initially believed it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then that second choice is what I was just talking about before, about having that opportunity of, do I shoot past their blockers when I'm in range of them,
Right.
or do I hold on? So those two choices felt to me rewarding to be able to make those choices, but they were the only two choices during the game that I felt had a significant impact over the gameplay. Not to say that my experiences as I placed things wasn't fun, because I enjoyed that, but I did find myself wanting a little bit more out of my choices. I wanted to feel more incentive to do something and to go certain directions. And so as I was thinking about that, I thought, why couldn't I have some sort of incentive in the maze to help me avoid certain situations and help me maybe go different directions? For example, I thought that it would be really interesting to have tokens that are placed in certain areas on the board at setup, and these tokens are laid face down or something. They could be cheese, they could be whatever on one side, but then on the other side, they have some sort of bonus that you get. Whether or not that's a bonus to, you get to add 1 to your die roll, 1 or 2 or 3 to your die roll, or you can now move a blocker of an opponent X amount of spaces or whatever. You have these abilities to adjust the play a little bit and give me a little bit more choice, so that I can choose to spend, when I've collected that token, spend that token at a certain time to be able to impact the play. Because there were certain times, I think, particularly during Chelsea and my play, that Chelsea felt, and she can speak to this better than I can, she probably felt
I was
very
stuck.
boxed in.
Right.
I didn't have a lot of options, so.
And she was getting blocked back and forth, both directions. Like, I'd stop her one way and flip her around, and then force her to stop the other way and go back around, and just felt trapped, which is not a great feeling in this game, because you already know, she already knew that I was already towards the end, so it was just a matter of time, and me just blocking back and forth was just rubbing salt in the wound.
Right. And
Yeah,
I
pretty
think
much.
that's something you can do without even with a lot, because obviously you already have copies of this game printed, and so that's something you could do without. You could just print up little cards with little punch-out tokens and slide them into your existing copies, and something like that, just to, like Tyson was saying, either power up your moves or adjust your dice rolls, or power down your opponent's dice rolls, or possibly even just make it like part of the win condition. You have to pick up one of these before you can win. So it forces you to either interact with the person because you're both going for the same token, or go a little further out of your way to make sure you don't interact. And it just gives you, maybe, like Tyson was saying, he enjoyed the game most when he felt that his turns were a little more meaningful and the choices were a little more meaningful. And so maybe putting one more thing out there to do, like a token to get or not get, and whether or not it's required or something, you can tweak it a little bit, gives you one more choice to make, and just gives a little bit more kind of more of the best part of the game
Yeah.
to you in hopefully roughly the same time, and without changing it up too much, give you just more of what it's already delivering, that it's good. So yeah, I think overall you have a really cool game that delivers a neat experience, and like great art, great colors, great presentation. Could use a little bit of tweaking on the rule books and maybe a couple more choices for people to make, but there's already a lot of like good fun things to do, and look at just maybe making more of that happen in the game. But other than that, you've got a fun game here, and keep up the good work. Thank you very much.